All right, here's a quick video, and I need to make it quick, of the 8-foot vanity that I built for our neighbors, Rick and Virginia. This took a long time to build, as you know. So before I could actually finish that, there were a couple projects I had to do. You guys were here when I built the built the riser for the table saw down here. And then Jim and Caleb, right? They were here when we were doing the wiring to power the table saw. And at the time, the legs, the table saw, this portion of the table had legs that went down. And because, to support the whole side, and because I had built this riser, the legs were too short. So I built this cabinet. And I probably sent you pictures. But I'm kind of continuing the theme of the Van Halen red and white black stripes. And Van Halen often used Marshall amplifiers. So I figured I'd build the cabinet as a Marshall amplifier. And it also serves as the legs. So you see I've got these are leveling feet. Something you'd put on a couch or something to, level it out. But I used the same idea to make it function as a support. So the cabinet is a cabinet to store things, and it replaces the legs that once were there. So I have a support front and rear. This is just something I put together. I did the Marshall lettering on the bandsaw, and to get the little inside areas, I used a scroll saw, which was a story in its own. So this is a shallow drawer. Actually, this one's deeper. It comes out, and I just store things that pertain to this saw. And then down in these drawers, miter, gauge, push blocks, and various parts. Again, things related to the saw. I'm a firm believer that drawers are where things go to die. So I try avoiding drawers when I can. And then on this side, this is the same as the other, but it's a shallow, it doesn't go back as far. But then this, down here, opens up, and I can store my saw blades and different things in there. So I had to build that before I could continue on with that. And in the meantime, so all these doors, the faces for the doors, the faces for the drawer, came from these long strips of ash. Those are 12-foot boards, and I cut them down to pieces about this size. And before I could, so what the doors are several pieces like this glued together to make panels. So you get the idea. You can see the grain. So each one of these was glued together. You can kind of see on here where the different boards are, here and there. Anyhow, so a problem developed with these where there was a cup in the boards. So the board would not lie flat. because there was a concave to it that the boards had just warped a little bit, which is pretty common. And before I can get a square 90 degrees angle on here to glue up the boards and make a nice flat panel, I had to get rid of that cup. And that's where this guy came in. This is a planer. So we bought the planer, and what you do is you feed in your warped board, and there's a series of blades that run this way and they spin, and the board goes in one end and comes out the other. And what those blades are doing, it's just shaving off a layer. And you shave off enough layers to remove the cup. So that's what I had to do. In order to use the planer, I had to build a cart for the planer. So, and it's, I hate unitaskers, things that do only one thing. So this cart also was made to hold my drill press and a couple other tools. And I've still got some modifications to do to this cart, but I just needed to get the basic bones done so that I could install the planer in order to plane the boards, which was necessary to build the panels, which then were cut down to size to make the doors and the drawer faces. So that's where we are now. There's really nothing unique about this other than it's 8 feet, or typically if somebody's going to build a cabinet or a vanity this long, they would build it in 3 stages. I wanted to do the full 8 foot because I didn't see any benefit to doing 3 pieces at the time. I've since learned my lesson, but that's one of many. These are concealed hinges with soft close feature. So when you close it, they don't slam. They just very gently close shut. And the same with the drawers. So you see, there's not that metal slider here. The sliders are underneath. And those, you see the orange pieces? Those are triggers. So I can release, they're like quick releases for the drawer. But the idea is that it's a nice clean surface. When you open the drawer, you don't see that metal guide for the drawer to run across. That's what it looks like inside. And same sort of thing. These are soft close. They have the full extension, meaning that they come out all the way. And then when you close it, nice and soft. You see, I've got some holes drilled here. That's for the hardware, this stuff. I really wanted to make some custom drawer pulls, but Virginia, Rick's wife, she wanted these because this is what's in her kitchen and it's what's in the bathroom. So she wanted everything to be standardized. But this is what it'll look like. Something like that. So, and I put a lot of time in selecting the pieces of wood. Virginia really likes wood with character, with a lot of feature to the grain. So I tried to match the boards that had the most interesting grain. and from the center, work my way out. So the most visually interesting pieces are in the center, and as you go out, they get a little less interesting. Still nice, but not as much character to the grain. Anyhow, and I did the same with the plywood for the drawers. So I think she'll like that. Let's see what else. So I did, as I built this, the carcass, so the box, this piece, the rails on top, the back, it's a French cleat, so this is 3/4 inch plywood here. I have a nailer down here, 3/4 inch plywood. This back is a 1/4 inch, but the sides, the dividers, the stringers up at the top, those are all 3/4 inch. And on the bottom, it's 3/4 inch. So what I wanted to do was, on this bottom piece of plywood, I cut a groove. Like this in the plywood, right? And so on the ends, like right here, you'd have this grooved piece, and then the sides come in and they're glued on like that. And then screws come in from the bottom. And same thing on the top. Screws for the stringers go through the top. And those also are cut with this kind of groove, dado, if you will. So what happens, let's say for the section that separates, the section that defines the drawers, right? You got one here, you would have one here, and then the drawers would go in the middle. Well, those dividers would fit into the groove like that. And what that does is it provides a lot of surface for glue, and I put screws in from the bottom as well. So the idea is that there won't be any kind of shifting left or right or racking like this. It makes it a little more stable, a little more sturdy if it's like that. So one of the lessons I learned, and this is just a faux bottom that I cut. I cut this, it's a 1/4 inch plywood. I cut this out to fit on the bottom because this vanity is going to be floating. It's going to bolt to the wall. It won't have a pedestal for it to sit on. And Rick is going to have to cut holes out in the bottom for the plumbing, for the pipes. I cut this piece out, this little 1/4 inch piece, so that we can make a very tight cut around the pipes and to make it look nice and clean. Because when he cuts this 3/4 inch bottom piece, it's going to be pretty gnarly. And the gaps between the pipes and the wood is probably going to be significant. So I just made this to cover up, to make it look nicer. But here's a couple of my mistakes. I cut those grooves, this was the first one, and then after I started measuring, I thought, well, nuts, I cut it in the wrong spot. So I measured again and started my second run, and I got halfway through and realized I goofed again. The measurements were correct on this one. Where I had goofed was the router. I didn't account for the side, for the base of the router as it was running along the guide. So instead of cutting here, for the third one, just the other side of this, it cut here. So each one of those mistakes I had to fill. So I cut a piece of, I think I used pine. Might have been pine, might have been ash, I forget. I've got some cutoffs that I found that I could, that were long enough that I could shave down and then fit in there and then sand it nice and flush. But this piece also serves to cover that mistake. So there's that. So that's about it. The back, I said it's a French cleat. This thing's going to hang on the wall, much like this is hanging on the wall. This work center of mine, I built a French cleat and then mounted the unit onto that cleat. That's what we're going to do. See how it's floating? There's no base below it. That's what we're going to do with this vanity. So this is the piece that's going to grab onto this piece. So it's two pieces of plywood. Imagine this. Imagine this is one piece of plywood and it's really long, it's 8 feet. I went to the table saw and I turned my blade from being 90 degrees to a 45 degree. So instead of being like this, I turned the blade like this and then ran that long piece of wide plywood through the blade. And what that did was it resulted in a cut like this. Now, this piece, one piece will mount on the wall like so, and the other piece will mount to the cabinet like that. So what happens is, now imagine this is the piece that's mounted to the wall. If this is the wall, it'll look like that. When I bring the cabinet or the vanity to it, it's going to lock in. And it's going to create a very sturdy hold all the way down the 8 feet. And then I'll screw this and this into the studs of the wall. And we've got about 6 studs to secure it to. So the French cleat will be on the wall, this will be on the wall, and the nailer down here will be on the wall, all drilled into the studs, or screwed into the studs rather. And then you can see also, I had inset this piece in front of the back. So this 1/4 inch back, I also had to cut a groove like this here. So that would go down to separate the sides. That narrow one was for the back. So that back, let's pretend this is all one long piece. Here's the back, the 1/4 inch, and it would sit right in there, like that. So not only are the sides locked in, but so is the back. So it's like this, and like this. So the way this is put together, it's like a big puzzle. And I did the same thing to these stretchers. And then I filled the void here with a strip that you can see maybe better over here. So before, I added this piece after the fact, just to make it nice and to provide, when they purchase the top, it just gives it one more piece to rest on. So, I mean, you could imagine here, I was going to do a solid piece and just cut out for the sinks, but that really didn't make any sense. This makes much more sense, and it's less material. So that's what this void's for. It's for the sink to set into. And these marks here, I filled them. They're pocket hole screws. So a screw will go in at an angle from this 3/4 inch piece into this face frame, which is the same material as this here. So that's it. I tell you, I can't wait to get this out of the shop. Oh, the finish. It's something called clean armor. I used this, it cures with UV light, and I used it on the doors and on the drawers. So what you do is you just wipe it on, and then you get a UV lamp, such as this. It has a bunch of these little, I guess they're LED lights. But it shines an ultraviolet light onto the material, onto that finish. And the finish is 100% solids. As opposed to this guy, the wipe-on poly is something that it's filled with all kinds of VOCs, real harmful chemicals, and it's maybe 70% solid. And the rest are these fumes, vapors that will, this liquid that will vapor off. Anyway, so it was something different to try on here. And I think I'm gonna put one more coat on. I want to give, Virginia really likes the feel of just bare wood. So I put as little finish on here as I could and still retain that feel, that textile, or not textile, the texture, tactile feel. I haven't had my coffee yet. Anyhow, right, so probably sometime this week, when we get a nice dry day where we can put it in the back of Rick's truck and drive it over to his house and mount it. Kind of looking forward to that. Get this big old behemoth out of here. It's 8 feet long. Like I was saying, a lot of times cabinet maker will make this into 3 pieces. I mean, you can kind of imagine that would be one piece, this would be a second, and then a third. The downside to that is you would need another set of sides. So this is a 3/4 piece. I would have another 3/4 here and another 3/4 over here for that. Imagine there's 3 boxes. Here's 1, 2, 3 boxes. So the sides of those boxes come together and double the thickness when you make it all one piece instead of 3 separate pieces. So there would be 1.5 inches thickness here and 1.5 inches thickness here. Well, by making it one long piece instead of 3, I could, it negated the need and saved 3/4 inch there and 3/4 there. So it gives them 1.5 inches more space in their drawers. And I think they're 24 inches, if I remember, wide. Yeah. So There she is. There's also a little lip here. See, it's about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit more. And it goes all the way down. Well, the reason for that is we want to mount some LED lights underneath with a motion detector. Because they don't have a door to their bathroom, and this is on their master suite. So one of them would have to do in the middle of the night when they get up to use the restroom, instead of turning on the light and disturbing the other, they could just sweep their foot underneath like this. And light will shine down from below there. Give her enough light, or him enough light, to move around the bathroom, but not disturb the other. Well, because I did that, I had to build a support. So it's like a big ladder underneath. I just used 2x4s and some scrap plywood I had. So I had a sturdy platform for this to rest, and as I built it, it gave me elevation so that I could use clamps. I've got this much room for clamp heads to fit underneath when I had to clamp things down to dry or what have you. So that came in real handy. And of course, those sawhorses are wonderful. So that's it. That's the project, and it's been a long time in the making. Had to do a lot of creative problem solving on this one, such as this contraption. This is what I used to square up these boards to make the panels. So I would put one of these boards, imagine, because you want this side to be perfectly straight. And then when that side's perfectly straight, I can run it alongside the fence of my table saw and cut this side perfectly straight. But if one side's all wonky, you can't run it down the side here without this side becoming all wonky. So that's what this was for. I took my wonky piece of wood and I set it in here like this, and those clamps came down to hold it. And I know that this piece right here that the clamps are mounted to all the way down, I know that that is square. So I ran that alongside here, and that cut each one of those boards nice and perfectly straight. So the side here is exactly the same as the side here, which is important when you're gluing up these panels, because otherwise you would have gaps, and you don't want gaps. It makes it look bad, and it's less strong. It makes for a weak joint. Well, and then the doors, of course, I took a router and I took the sharp edge off of them, and then I've got some some homemade tools to do some of the finer finishing. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. There was a lot of unforeseen problems that I had to solve, but that's one of the things that I enjoy about building stuff. This here used to be one long piece. So it would have come out all the way to here. And I figured visually that that wouldn't be as good. Because I wanted it, because it's 8 feet, I wanted to show off the fact that it's 8 feet. Well, you've got stiles and rails. And if I had done it the other way, it would look odd. Visually, it wouldn't look right. And when this, because this whole thing is going to be, take up the full wall. So there's going to be a wall here that comes out this way, and a wall over there that goes out that way. And I cut this to so that there was about a 1/4 inch gap between that wall and that wall, a 1/4 inch on each side. Because walls are never perfectly plumb, right? They're never perfectly 90 degrees. So I wanted to give myself a little bit of grace between the walls. And once we get this set where we want it, I'm going to make a very thin strip to cover that gap. So it'll go against the wall in here. And if this piece had gone all the way, then that piece that fills the gap would look odd as well. So, but if you stand back, you can kind of see where the grain, where it matches, because I just had to cut it out so I can put those pieces in. When you stand back, you can kind of see, oh, yeah, that might be the same piece of wood. It kind of carries through the theme. So there was a lot of juggling pieces around. And this piece was actually supposed to be the other way around, but I think it looks better this way. I think the way the grain kind of comes in, it sort of flows a little better. And once they have a top, I think he wants to get a piece of corian to go on top. It's going to come over, the top is going to hang over this, and it's probably 1/2 inch it'll hang down, and it'll come up and over. Well, it's going to create a shadow. And if this is dark, if this was over here under that shadow, it wouldn't look right. So anyway, there it is. That's what I've been working on for so long. Hopefully Rick doesn't want the leftover material, because I have other projects in mind for that. So there it is. I'll get some pictures of it when it's finished and installed. And I can't wait to clean my shop, because it is a mess. I cleaned out, I had a bunch, the leftover plywood was against that wall, and when I pulled it away from the wall, the cobwebs and the spiders was just horrible. So I put it in my wood rack over here, the leftovers. Well, when I did that, I pulled this away, and same sort of thing, just cobwebs and spiders all the way down. So that took about a day of cleaning. Yeah. Okay, so I guess I'll send you photos later on of the completed project. All right, love you guys. Take care. Bye.